welcome folks to the sanctuary. And I don't know about everybody, but I have to say I'm super happy because I see all these names popping up and I know most of you. So this makes me super excited. So stick to the script and to the point because all of you, the ones that know me, I can go on and on and on. So good evening. Welcome to this evening event. As you know, most of you, my name is Aileen Javier, and along with Corinne, Carey, I'll be moderating tonight's event. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Mohican people. It is with gratitude and humility that we acknowledge that the Sanctuary for Independent Media resides upon the ancestral homelands of the Mohican people, who are indigenous peoples of the land of New York. Despite tremendous hardships and being forced from their lands today, their community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Muncie community. But we at the Sanctuary, we are paying honor and respect to their ancestors, past and present, and we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. So tonight's event is People's House Sanctuary, a program of the Sanctuary for Independent Media. This event is a collaboration with the ACRE Present series with support from RPI's Arts Department and School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Science, and from the New York State Council of the Arts. For those of you who are not yet familiar with the Sanctuary, we are a nonprofit community organization based in North Central Troy, just across the Hudson River from Albany. We operate a block-wide campus of activities. If we weren't in the midst of the pandemic, we would be sitting together in the Sanctuary for Independent Media, which is our headquarters, that doubles as a telecommunications facility and performance venue, where we host speakers, independent film screenings, and live music. It is also home to 2 recording studios for our community radio station, WOOC 105.3 FM. We host a volunteer-driven nightly news and public affairs show called the Hudson Mohawk Magazine, which is how I first got involved here as a radio producer. Here at the Sanctuary for Independent Media, we also run a variety of youth programs. We operate the Color City Growers, our urban gardens, and bring all of our activities out into Freedom Square, which is our outdoors performance venue. This upcoming spring, we are thrilled to be opening the doors of our newest building on the block, the Nature Lab Urban Environmental Education Center, which will house a community science lab and the People's House Sanctuary, which brought this event to life. And this is an extension of Nature Lab program. We are focusing on health empowerment and equity. We do a lot and we document everything. If you want to see it, you just have to visit Sanctuary TV, our YouTube channel, which has more than 50,000 subscribers, and we need more, so remember, click like from all over the world. We're live streaming this event on Facebook, and we'll be uploading and editing version of this video to Sanctuary TV soon. When it's up, all of our event registrants will receive a link. I'm going to turn it back to Corinne to go over some housekeeping and introduce tonight's panelists.
Thank you, Aileen. I'm so excited about the event tonight. I just want to remind everyone who is attending that this event is being recorded. And if you have your camera enabled, you could be visible on the recording. Similarly, we'll be making the resources and discussions shared in the chat box available in the future. In order to ask a question or chat with the panelists or attendees, look to the bottom of your screen. You'll see a chat box and a Q&A box. If you have a question, please type it in the box and we'll call on as many of you as we can to unmute you so that you can ask your question of the director or the panelists. You can also send a private message to someone through the chat function as well. This event is going to run until about 10 p.m. As we include the screening of the film. So let's let us get started. I am so pleased to introduce you all to Nicholas Bruckman. Nicholas produced the feature film Valley of Saints, which won the Audience Award at the Sundance Film Festival and was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award. The film was released on Netflix and was a New York Times Critics' Pick. He previously directed the feature documentary La Americana, which won the Best Documentary Prize at the New York and LA Latino Film Festivals. The film broadcast worldwide on networks including PBS, National Geographic, and Al Jazeera. Nicholas Bruckman is the director of Not Going Quietly, the film which is the topic of our event this evening. This is his latest film about 32-year-old Ady Barkan's life. Nicholas's work has received support from foundations including the Fledgling Fund, CineReach, NISCA, the New York Film Association, NYFA, and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. He's the founder and CEO of People's Television, a New York and DC-based branded and original content company. And we are so lucky to have had him do a workshop with us on Be the Media this afternoon, and to have him with us here tonight. So welcome, Nicholas. And I'm going to invite you to say a few words about the film before we screen it.
Well, thank you so much, Brenda and Corinne, and it was great to meet Brenda and Sina and Aileen and everybody earlier. I'm really honored to be here and show the film. I wish we could do it in person, and I hope to do that next year. I'm really excited about the conversation that we'll have after. I won't say too much about the movie that you're about to see, except that it's not just a love letter to Ady Barkan. It's also a love letter to all of the activists and organizers who are working to strengthen our democracy and protect our media across issues, universal healthcare, one of those many issues. And so doing the work that we're going to be doing after this screening is really why I made it. And I'm just excited for that opportunity to do it with you all and hear how you guys are thinking about translating this work in your own community. So thank you, and I'll see you after the show.
Now, I want to have a chance to tell the story about my friend, Ady Barkan.
He's been an activist and an organizer all of his life.
With us today is Ady Barkan. I can't do Ady's story justice. I will let him tell it.
After Carl was born, we felt like we had reached the mountaintop.
Say hi.
And then, out of the clear blue sky, we were struck by lightning.
I was diagnosed with ALS today.
The knowledge that I was dying was terrible. But dealing with my insurance company was even worse. I wanted to spend every moment I had left with Rachel and Carl. But then Congress came after our health care. I couldn't stay quiet any longer.
My next guest made headlines when he confronted a Republican senator on an airplane.
This is your moment to be American hero. All right, ready to rumble.
We decided to start a movement.
To urge people to stand up, confront the elected officials. All right, I'm gonna knock on your door.
Did you just get out of jail? Are you gonna keep protesting on Monday?
Yeah.
What do we want? Healthcare!
I am willing to give my last breath to save our democracy. What are you willing to give?
Liz, I'm having trouble breathing.
I just think we have to stop.
Our time on this earth is the most precious resource we have.
Carl, I love you so much. Movement building allows me to transcend my body, and that's the beauty of democracy, that together we can be more than our individual selves.
The paradox of my situation is, the weaker I get, the louder I become.
Who's it? Alvin!
What an incredible film. And what an incredible program we have for you for the rest of the evening. Here at the Sanctuary for Independent Media, we are committed to honoring Ady Barkan and his work after viewing this film by asking one another, what are you willing to do? We're going to be joined tonight by an incredible panel of activists that are going to talk to us about what we can all do to promote health equity in New York State. And I cannot wait to introduce you to our guest speakers. Tracy Corder, who you saw in the film. I'm so happy that she'll be with us tonight. Ursula Rozum, who, and I just realized I might have pronounced her last name wrong because we've never met in person. Damn COVID. But Ursula runs the campaign for the New York Health Act. Scott Denoyers, again, guessing on the pronunciation, who is a local activist pushing for passage of the New York Health Act, and Julia Solow. Apologies again. And I just want to invite everyone participating tonight that you can ask questions in the chat box. If you'd like us to unmute you and ask your question live, we can do that. Just let us know. So that's the way you can participate this evening. We're going to have different speakers. We're going to introduce them, and then they're going to spend 10 or so minutes talking about their work and how you can get involved. And I'm stalling a little bit because I'm hoping that we're ready to run the next thing, because we are joined by another special guest this evening, and hopefully we're ready to play that guest.
New York, it's great to be with you all today at the Sanctuary for Independent Media screening of Not Going Quietly. My name is Ady Barkan, but I guess you all know that now. And thanks to that steamy shower scene with me and Nate, you probably all know me a little too well now. I have so much love and respect for the friends you got to meet in the film, and the wonderful filmmakers, Nick, Amanda, and Ryder, who worked tirelessly to capture the raw and beautiful turbulence of these past few years of the life of my family and our country. Thank you all for being here today, for being here yesterday, and for being here tomorrow, every day until justice is real. I hope that you'll continue the conversation online and in person about how we can shape the future of our democracy through our voices, courage, and our tenacity. And with that, see you on the front lines.
So exciting, right? Oh man, we are so lucky, and we are so lucky to have with us Nicholas Bruckman, who is the creator of this film, and for working with Ady to get us that special video message that made tonight really extra special. So I want to bring Nicholas back to say a few words after the film, and we'll, if you put your questions to Nicholas in the chat box, we will make sure that he addresses them. Nicholas, thank you so much for making that film.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and for bringing together such an amazing panel tonight. Tracy, so glad you could join us. She's one of the stars that made that whole trip and this whole movement possible. So really glad she can be here and share some wisdom. I'm really just a documenter and observer of the movement for justice that you are all in. So I defer largely to the wisdom of this panel on how we can do what Ady said and use our voices to shape the future of our democracy. I just think that media and film can be a part of lifting that up. And when I met Ady a couple of years ago and fell in love with him, saw the opportunity to do that through this film. I really think that Ady is one of the kind of great civil rights leaders of our time, and will be known in many generations and studied in that way. And I want this film to be a part of it. That's kind of my goal. But of course, it's not about Ady. It's about him passing that torch to all of us, the way that he does to Anna Maria during the Kavanaugh hearings, and gives his voice, even though he has none, to so many others. So that's what tonight's all about, and really glad to be here and tell you more about the making of.
I'm just curious. I'll start off with my question, and then we'll see if we've got some other questions in the chat box. But how did you first meet Ady? How did you have the vision to know to sort of start this journey with him?
Yeah, so I got to tell this already to the elite few who joined the Be the Media workshop earlier today at the Media Sanctuary. But in addition to making independent films, I run a social justice commercial video production company that does this kind of storytelling, but for brands, for nonprofits, and for social movements. So we make films for Black Lives Matter, for Greenpeace, for Democratic candidates and other progressive causes and voices that we believe in. And that's how I met Ady. Liz Jaff, who I had a mutual friend in common. You all just got to know Liz and her badass self in the movie. She's done this kind of work traditionally for political candidates and worked on the Obama campaign. We had a friend in common, and she called me up in early 2018, basically as a job that they needed a 2-minute launch film. She said, "Hey, Nick, I just met this guy on an airplane. It was really crazy. Check out this video of him talking to Senator Flake." And nobody really knew who Ady was at the time. I mean, they'd seen CNN, so I take credit for knowing Ady before he was cool. And, you know, I think if anything I did well with this project, I think mostly it was just seeing that insight at that time, because there really wasn't a lot of time to lose. Ady had already been sick for a year when I met him. I flew out to Santa Barbara to shoot that short launch film. And actually the first frame I ever shot with him is in the opening of the movie. I think you guys saw, maybe there was some tech stuff going on when Ady was topless and is bare chested and, you know, saying, "All right, let's get started." And in that moment, I was like, this guy's amazing. You know, the way he was dealing with the disease and the way he was dealing with our government and the parallels between what was happening with his body and what was happening to our country, and the way he was fighting both made me know there was going to be a bigger story there. And so really at the end of that first interview for the short kind of launch YouTube video, I pitched him this idea, and he was into it. He says that he looked deep in his heart and talked to Rachel and what this would mean for him and his family. And he decided after serious contemplation that what mattered most was for him to be rich and famous, and that this documentary might help him achieve that, which is like, you know, he's kind of half joking about, because he saw, I think, that it could be a tool to help further his movement, and that him and I were politically aligned. And, you know, we wanted to do something journalistic and authentic and not propaganda, but I think, you know, my leanings, I think, come through in the way that the story is portrayed. And he knew that I think, believed that we would do justice to that. And that's why he gave that level of access. So that's how it began, and many more stories to tell along the way, but that's the genesis of it.
I'm looking for some questions in the chat box. I think people are really eager to hear our speakers, but how did you know when to end the film?
Yeah, we didn't at first. The initial concept of the film was really that it was going to tell the story of Ady's trip across the country to, you know, win the midterm elections. And we all thought we were going to be done in November of 2018. And that ends up, of course, really just being the midpoint of the movie, because Ady just keeps doing these incredibly bigger. The Kavanaugh protests happened, and the testifying for Medicare for all, and then, you know, things that we thought might be bigger in the film. I mean, Ady spent months interviewing all the presidential candidates, all of which ended up being a, you know, 60-second sequence in the film. And throughout all of that, there was the sense of, oh my God, Ady's doing these great things. He's in the news, he's changing the country, people are following him. But really the story to me is about this moment in Ady's life when he is dealt this blow right at the time where his son is born. And in the subsequent months, not only does he get this incredibly devastating diagnosis, but also the country is dealt this diagnosis of the Donald Trump administration. And to me, the journey is about Ady reconciling what those two things mean for himself and his family and a father, and his desire to have a second child, and his belief in the country and his family. And then through activism and through this work, I think reconciles that personal journey of what kind of father he can be. And to me, that was the resolution of the film, not a political, not a president, not an election, but about Ady finding meaning and purpose in this work.
You couldn't have known how beautiful that would have worked out at the end, but your vision is really incredible. And just that moment when he was losing his voice just as his son was beginning to talk. I know Branda has a question. So Branda, why don't you ask your question?
I mean, you're dedicated to creating films as an organizing tool, and I'm left as an audience member with this incredible feeling of personal hope. There's some way that you're speaking to all of us. You've structured the film so that it's like somehow we're all pulled in and are inspired to believe that every little move we can make can help. And I'm just wondering, how did you structure the film to think about the audience and inspire us to action?
Yeah, I think I appreciate that, Brandon. And there is a lot of structure to it. There's hundreds of hours of footage. Ady's life didn't move in the kind of linear way that it moves in the film in this full circle. And I think that good documentaries can't really just point the camera at somebody and make that into narrative. And, I grew up watching fiction films, and for the, screenwriters in the audience, there is a traditional 3-act structure that movies have, and there needs to be an inciting incident that drives your hero on its journey. And there needs to be a, darkest moment, which is maybe when Ady loses his voice on the tour and it feels like maybe he can't go on, or the Kavanaugh protest. So we really tried to, Ady's work is, his life really does follow so many. The serendipity of meeting on that plane and Liz happening to be there and Jeff Flake happening to be there. You could never have made any of that up. So it is like a movie already. But we very deliberate. I, as a filmmaker, I think, just to answer like the cinematic part of your question, really tried to think about what makes good storytelling and model the moments. And there's so much Ady did that didn't fit into that structure. There's so many amazing things that happened that were either politically poignant or politically powerful or emotionally poignant, or other good scenes with Carl, but I also was really, this story is really difficult emotionally to go through. And, it's very difficult to witness all of this, Ady going through this, and to become close to them over all these years, as I know Tracy can attest to as well. And what was important in the film was that we really kept audiences, and I hope successfully, in between states of despair and joy and hope. So we could never put really couldn't have 2 sad scenes back to back, couldn't have 2 funny scenes back to back. And so that meant that, Ady did amazing work, like raising money against Susan Collins, where he raised $4 million and was all, making front page news, but that didn't tie in to the emotional arc of that story. And so the movie took a year to edit. So that gives you a sense of how much love went into that, with our editor, Kent Bassett, and co-writer, Amanda. A lot of the narration of the film was all written afterwards. We actually worked with Ady together in a Google Doc because he didn't speak anymore, to try to thread some of the beginning and bookending of his life. And that's why we chose to bookend the film with his voice. The first act of the film uses his computerized voice. And another reason for that, which I'll stop talking in a moment and let the activists do their work, but the biggest challenge of making this thing was that Ady was really losing his voice. That was happening to us as filmmakers. And every time we talked to him, it sounded different. And normally when you make a film like this, you go at the end of the story, you edit your thing, and you go back and you're making the film about whatever, I don't know, Bernie Sanders, and you go back and say, hey, Bernie, I never got this interview bite about you as a child. Can I come back and do another interview with you again? And we couldn't do that with Ady because he couldn't speak anymore. And so everything he ever said with his natural voice was like one-time thing to have. And that's why partly we were forced to use his computer to tell the story of his early life, because we didn't have it in the way we needed. But it actually created all these creative possibilities and humor and other things that I think made the film ultimately better.
Wow, fascinating. I want to see you answering these questions on an award show someday. I think right, Tracy? I think we've got a question/comment from Jen Bounstein that I think will really kick off the panel. So Jen, why don't you go?
Thanks, Corinne. So, I mean, I can read it, but I think this is a way to hear these incredible voices. I'm curious about the coalition building, right? Like the ways in which you all connected during the time, and thinking that like Me Too was in the same time, and that Black Lives Matter was working at the same time, and how this intersectional work has found its way into your work in general. And also just like, you know, the 40 days across the country. He's very funny. That's very funny.
Yeah. Sorry, was that a question for me?
I think it was more for whoever was
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good question to keep in mind as we get to the panel here, and I'm going to turn it back over to Aileen. You can keep asking questions in the chat box. I'm sure Nicholas will be looking at it from time to time. One of the questions is, how do movies get submitted for the Academy Awards? Something we should know.
I'll answer that briefly. So the movie has been nominated for several precursors to the Academies. So it was shortlisted by the International Documentary Association for the Best Documentary of the Year. At the Critics' Choice Awards, which is Sunday, it was nominated for the Best Political Documentary of the Year. So we'll find out on Sunday. And Ady was nominated as the most compelling living subject of a documentary, to which he said, well, it's better than the alternative. Which I thought was really funny. And I guess that's, if you know him, it's funny. The reason I bring all this up is because if you want to help us on that journey, you can definitely all do that through your social media accounts and through your voices. I'll just make this plug now before we get into the more important work of political organizing, but follow Not Going Quietly on Instagram and Twitter. Tweet how much you love the movie and tell your friends and family that they can all watch it right now. It's on Amazon and iTunes and Apple TV and all those things. You can get it for $4. And that chatter that goes on online is heard by the critics and the voting members of the Academy, and we can amplify all that stuff. So you could really be a part of that movement to get more people aware of this story. And it's really an underdog, smaller fight, just like the activists in the movie. Like, we're really trying to get grassroots folks and activists to care about this. So thank you for asking. And
maybe somebody who can compose a really good text for those of us for those folks who are participating tonight that aren't so well versed on Twitter or social media, can put a suggestion in the chat box throughout the night about how folks can do that. I know I'll do that as soon as we're done here tonight. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to my co-host, Aileen, to introduce our first speaker. Aileen?
Tracy, I love your performance. Tracy Corder is the Deputy Campaign Director for Action Centered on Race and the Economy's Policing Work. She comes to this work after serving as a social worker, electoral campaign organizer, and political strategist. Her most recent position as Director of Federal Action and Racial Justice at Center for Popular Democracy worked to advance direct action as a tactic to advocate for progressive legislation on housing, immigration, voting rights, climate, and policing. And she serves on the advisory board of Be a Hero, and she's the steering committee of Black Women for, and is a trainer for the Bird Dog Nation as we watch it in the film. So welcome, Tracy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. And I wrote up some notes so I did not go over. My name is Tracy, as was said, and I use the pronoun she, her. And one of the most special things I've ever been a part of was the tour that led to this film. So if you know me, you know I'm a dreamer. So before we get started, I want to ask you to dream with me for a second. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can just relax your gaze. So I'm going to take you through an exercise with me. So I want you to think about a good day. the best day. You wake up feeling good, you check your phone, you have a text message that makes you smile, you have a good breakfast and listen to some of your favorite music. So I want you to think about those sounds. What are you hearing? What are you feeling? It's a sunny day and you meet your best friend at the park. You have one of those conversations that just feels easy. You talk forever. You smile until your cheeks hurt and you say goodbye. So you take a nice stroll home. You see kids playing, you smell barbecue, feel the wind on your face. What else are you smelling? What do you feel? So you get home and you get settled into your favorite room of the house and you just sit for a second. You take a deep and relaxing breath. So before we end, I want you to take that breath with me. So in and out. So open your eyes with me. So I want people to sit with that image for a second. And I want you to think, did you see police in that day? Did you see any prisons? Was anyone getting evicted from their home? Do you think in your perfect day, in your perfect location, people were worried about how to pay for their healthcare? And I always do that exercise because that's the world I dream of building. And the only way I can really do this work is to think about that all the time. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, and my activism and my work has always been rooted in this question, what more can I do? So I grew up seeing inequality all around me. And I went to college to be a social worker because I thought that was the way to address it. Eventually, I kind of saw that that wasn't enough and I needed to do more. So I started to work on candidate campaigns. And I thought if we just elect good people to office, they can make real policy change and that would impact the people I was serving, and then things would be great. And as most of you know, even after we elect people, we have to hold them accountable. You saw a little bit of that in the film. And even more, there are people who are elected who don't share our values. And so after being disappointed by candidate after candidate, I once again decided that I need to do a little bit more. So I did. I started doing issue-based work, advocating for racial and economic justice in a little bit of different ways, which landed me in my previous position at Center for Popular Democracy, where I met Ady. So I had gotten a chance to know Ady and hang with him socially before he confronted Jeff Flake on the plane. And in 2019, in January 2019, I put together a panel and a training for an event in LA, and I asked Ady to come speak. So he talked about civil disobedience and why it was fundamental to fighting for our democracy. And at that point in time, I had never been arrested. So I was like, okay, sure, good luck over there. But right after that, I did my first bird dog training. I hadn't even formally bird dogged yet. It was just a training on paper. And I did it in a room full of 100 people and I never turned back. And so then at the same time, Ady told me he was thinking about putting an RV trip across the country together. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice for you. But eventually I was asked to come along to a few stops. I was told the stops would be really similar to the LA event. Ady would speak to a room and I would train after them. And I agreed to, I think, maybe 3 stops. And well, as I told you before, I'm always looking to do more. So those 3 stops turned into me going on the entire tour from California to Maine. And so I think of this film as both the story of Ady and also a love letter to activists. Something that reminds us that nothing is more important than our story and our determination to do more for each other. The people that you saw on screen are now some of my favorite people in the world. I'm connected to them because we did something together that was really special and that anyone watching could also do. Maybe you couldn't do the RV part, maybe you could, but the confronting people who want to take your rights away part and then not allowing yourself to be silenced part, anyone can do. And there's no shortage of things to fight for. Early on in this work, I felt really intimidated. I felt like decision makers were experts, and if I showed up without knowing every fact and figure about an issue, then I kind of didn't deserve to be in the room. And so I'm really grateful to my organizing family that now I know that can't be true. When I am equipped with my story and kind of my righteous anger and a friend with a cell phone to record me, there's no one I can't confront in power. Right now, my work at ACRE is at the intersection of Wall Street and racial justice. I talk about who profits from oppressing communities like mine and how to stop them. And I don't know if I would have the courage to do that and to take on something so daunting if I hadn't done this tour and I hadn't met Ady and I hadn't met the people who you saw on screen. And it's always a treat to see kind of my tour family in the world. During the Kavanaugh fight, Helen was there with a different organization, but I always was tracking her. I knew where she was, she knew where I was. During the 2020 presidential election primary, Ady and I both publicly supported Elizabeth Warren. He kind of did it as an individual and I did it part of Black Women For. And I called him before I put out the statement and asked him what he thought. And when Ady testified for Medicare for All, like you saw in the film, I was in the overflow room with a group of activists cheering him on. And so it's important to me that people who see this film know that this work is for everyone and that they shouldn't let anything stop them from getting involved. So, you know, join an organization. I'm a member of Working Families Party. That's my political home. Knock on doors and make calls. I canvass with like a local group in Oakland called Oakland Rising when I'm able to. And I actually just got back from Minnesota from supporting the public safety ballot measure. And so even though we didn't win in the same ways that we were able to flip the House, it was really important to be there and I switched the narrative about why that's important. And you can support visionary candidates. And you can also confront politicians loud and in public because that is your right. And so I'll end here and say a moment from the tour that I'll never forget is our time in Vermont. We were at the end and we were extremely exhausted and we were really worried about how tired Ady was. And so there was a house party that Anna Marie and I said that we would go speak at instead of Ady so that he can rest. And I remember just after I spoke, Anna and I both looked at each other and we were crying and we couldn't understand why. And then we really thought about feeling this weight of what it meant that Ady was losing his voice, and that now it was our responsibility to speak a little bit louder. So when you see Anna confront Jeff Flake, or when you see us get arrested, just know that we don't take that lightly. We understand that we have this responsibility to carry this work on, like for Ady and for ourselves and for our communities, and for everybody on this call. So thank you.
Oh, Tracy, thank you so much for that. Really, it just, I think we're all going to draw from your energy here. And we certainly do have a lot of fights here in New York that we need to bring all of this energy to. So thank you for being with us, for lending us your voice tonight, and just wait till you hear these other speakers, because these are the issues that we got to focus on now. I am delighted to welcome Ursula Rozum to speak next. Ursula is the co-director for the campaign for New York Health. Ursula lives in her hometown of Syracuse, New York, the unceded territory of the Haudenosaunee people, where her parents arrived from Poland in the 1980s. Ursula earned her BA in political science and Hispanic literature from McGill University in Montreal. As a student in Canada and in Cuba, she witnessed how other countries treat healthcare as a right. Ursula caught the organizing bug while doing voter registration during the 2008 Obama campaign. She joined the campaign for New York Health as a super volunteer in 2014. We love super volunteers. And as the upstate campaign coordinator in 2016. She currently serves as co-director of the campaign for New York Health. And the pandemic is exposing the weaknesses in our current healthcare system and why we have to create a system that guarantees care for everyone. The New York Health Act would provide comprehensive universal health coverage, including long-term care for every resident of New York. And I am so excited to ask Ursula to say a few words to us this evening. Ursula?
Well, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? I see some nods. Okay. I feel so honored to be on this panel, to be following Tracy and the film. I've been hearing about this film being produced. There's been like a little bit of hype. And so it's really just feels like a blessing to be able to watch it with all of you tonight. As was mentioned, my family came to the US from Poland in the 80s. And so we grew up in my house with a profound distrust of the American medical system. Basically, my family and all Polish families just believe that American doctors want to send you for tests so that they can charge you money for everything that you need. So really growing up, I had very little relationship with the healthcare system or the medical system. I won't get into the stories of care, experiencing care and not getting care, but it wasn't until I was, I think 34 and I got married to someone with a really good health insurance plan. And it never, it's always shocking to me just to think about, as a woman, I have to rely on my husband and we have to rely on their boss for something as basic as access to healthcare. So when I think of this fight for universal healthcare, I think about it being extremely liberating for all of us in many different ways, but really that it's about freedom to live life to our fullest potential with dignity. So the Campaign for New York Health strategy to grow the movement that we need to win universal healthcare is grounded in sharing healthcare stories. And that's what really inspired me to get involved with the campaign. So it feels like so long ago, 7 years ago, not so long, in 2014. It was after the Affordable Care Act passed, and many of us were very disappointed about the fact that universal health care wasn't being considered at that time, and that private insurance companies were still really at the center of our health system. So that's around the time the Campaign for New York Health formed, seeing an opening to experiment with a universal single payer healthcare model in New York State. And I say that our campaign has really grown around sharing healthcare stories. I think about some of our most powerful moments over the years have been when there have been public hearings on the bill, and those have really, between the hearings, we do a lot of outreach work where we invite people to share their stories, join trainings, share their stories and lobby visits. But the public hearings that we've had on the bill in 2014 and 2015, and then again in 2019, really show like all the people versus like the 40 people in each hearing versus the 1 or 2 lobbyists. So hearing hours and hours of testimony really has helped to sway the public debate in New York State in support of universal health care. We've just in New York, in terms of thinking about how close are we to winning healthcare for all, many of you may know that the New York Health Act has majority support in the state legislature right now. This is something we achieved this year. A few years ago when we were first getting started, we had like maybe 2 or 3 senators on the bill in 2014 when the campaign first came together. So it really feels like a very significant step to say we have majority support in the state legislature now. And the most recent poll on universal health care from Data for Progress showed that New Yorkers overwhelmingly are supporting the right to health care. When voters were polled, 81% of respondents, of voters said they support health care as a right, that the wealthy should pay more, that everyone should have access to care. So I think it's really important to remember that people, when we talk to people about their healthcare experiences, it's one of our most powerful organizing tools because people are supporting the right to healthcare. And we shouldn't be surprised if we think that in New York State, the number that we come across is that about 50% of people with insurance cannot afford their care. So people are spending money on premiums to private insurance companies, and they're still skipping basic healthcare. So I think it should really give us a lot of hope where we are right now. And the last thing I want to say before I pass it on to the next amazing speakers we're going to hear from is this idea of being a hero and the leadership in our movement. What really spoke to me about this film was how Ady used his story. And when we do trainings with the Campaign for New York Health on storytelling, I often use a definition of leadership that I'll share with you. That leadership is accepting the responsibility for enabling others to achieve a shared purpose in the face of uncertainty. And so when I think about what does our movement need to really win big transformational change, I think about this idea of leadership as accepting responsibility to help us achieve a shared purpose. And that's when I think of what we just said about that there's a role for everyone in the movement. Some people will be very inspiring with their stories. Other people are going to be like that person holding the camera. Another one of us is going to be how Liz was coaching Ady on what he was going to say in that meeting. So there really is a role for everyone. And so really in the Campaign for New York Health, we really try to prioritize creating spaces to share those skills. And we've been really inspired by the bird dogging action at Be a Hero. Many of us were participated in those protests in DC. So this watching this movie really made me warm and fuzzy thinking about many of the things that activists here in New York are doing. And it's really beautiful to see like the sharing of these tactics and skills across our national and our state movement. So the last thing I'll say is, before I pass it on, is the Campaign for New York Health does have a few actions coming up that we would love for all of you to know about and participate in. We have a day of action coming up on Thursday, this coming Thursday, digital day of action to complement in-person street actions happening. So on Thursday, we're inviting supporters of the New York Health Act, people who care about health justice, to get online, get on Twitter, get on Facebook, get on the phone, and let our state legislators know why universal health care is an issue that burns in our souls. And we're encouraging people to share their stories on Twitter. And if you RSVP at the link, you'll be shared with a reminder and a toolkit. And so we're hoping that this is something that we can keep doing in the coming months and really growing the number of people who have this leadership skill of sharing their stories, because we know that this is really how we can move the public and our decision makers to take action. So yeah, I'll leave it there, and please join us on Thursday for the New York Health Act Day of Action. And thanks so much for this opportunity to share space with you all tonight.
So with honor, I present you Scott Denoyers. We have become friends in different fights, and he's a loving father who lost his son because of $20 bill. Danny died by suicide after failing to get his medication refilled because he missed a $20 premium he was not aware of. Danny was 29 when he died. So Scott had conservative views on healthcare before, but after he encountered his own health issues and his son's death, he was exposed to the realities of free market healthcare. He became a Medicare for All activist, channeling his grief into activism against the system that he says took his son's life. He promised Danny, and I'm gonna quote you, Scott, I promised his siblings and him at the funeral in front of everyone that I was going to make our lawmakers look me in the eye and see the consequences of their decisions. Welcome here, Scott.
Thank you again, Aileen, and thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you everybody for everything you do. Like she had mentioned, I lost my son Danny when he missed a $20 payment to his managed Medicaid plan. It was part of the ACA. The medication he was on was risperidone, has a known suicidal risk withdrawals. And by missing that $20 payment, they cut him off his insurance, and subsequently his medication was $250 out of pocket when I was watching the video and Tracy, oh my goodness, the bird dogging thing. It matters. It really matters. Ursula had mentioned some of the bird dogging that we had done. She had found out that our Speaker of the Assembly and the House were going to be at the Syracuse State Fair a couple months back, and asked me if I would like to be able to film my promise to Danny and confront Carl Heastie and Andrea Cousins. You see, the New York Health Act actually had the majority for the Assembly and has passed the Assembly 4 times already. And for the first time this year, we had the majority support in the Senate as well. So it was only a matter of having the bill called for a vote. We had the votes, and they decided not to call because we had the votes. These politicians have heard Danny's story, and I made sure that Carl Heastie understood that he is either for removing the profit motive from our healthcare system or he's supporting Danny's murderers. There is no middle ground. So shortly after our confrontation with Carl Heastie that day, where I was able to explain to him Danny's story eye to eye, just as in my promise. And later on that day, we'd also confronted Andrea Cousins. And I asked Carl Heastie why he didn't call for a vote. And his response was, we have work to do, or we're working on it. We have work to do was Andrea Cousins' response. Shortly later on, they were confronted and asked, what is this work they're doing by the media? Andrea Cousins was forced to respond with, I am now calling working groups for the New York Health Act, the first time ever. That was a direct reaction to our action. I'm asking everybody, it doesn't matter if you can put a whole bunch of people together and hold signs out at a corner. Maybe you can't do some organizing like that. Maybe you can knit, and you can knit berets. I work with a group of Red Berets that, you know, they're working on universal health care on state level at a national level, because I will work with them for whole Washington, and they will work with us on New York Health Act. We'll work with CalCare, we'll work with NASCARE, because we know these insurance companies aren't going to let up. So we have to join together, everybody, and unite regardless of your differences. You know, some people don't like Jimmy Dore, some people don't like Brianna Joy Gray, whatever. Put your differences aside, unite and fight together for healthcare to remove insurance companies and the profit motive from our healthcare system. I call it legalized manslaughter for profit, because that's what it is. I'm also asking if you can maybe host a table at, you know, a farmer's market, at a suicide prevention walk, at a cancer walk, at your local food pantry. Set up a table, give out information. One thing I've noticed as I'm doing a lot of these tables is, though we have the majority sponsorship in the House and the Senate, we don't have a lot of ground game here in New York. A lot of people haven't heard of this bill, which is crazy. It's been around for 30 years. That's on us as activists. We've got to get out there. We've got to make the noise, because 2 people in the campaign can't do it all by themselves. That's on us. I've been working on a couple other events. We have an action down in New York City, actually, on Monday. We have sent a group that I work with, March for Medicare for All, has sent a letter to Pfizer, being the biggest beneficiary of COVID, giving out free vaccines and free testing. We feel if they can benefit so much for a free vaccine for all, that they should support Medicare for all. Allow us to negotiate fair prices like they did with Canada. Danny's medication, $250 in America, is $35 in Canada. This is across the board on every medication. Insulin, $250 in America, $25 in Canada, because they negotiate prices. Pfizer has chosen to ignore our letters and our emails. So on Monday, we're going to show them what a system of pay or die looks like. We're having a die-in at the Pfizer building in New York City. We plan on shutting their building down for the day. They want to kill our children so they can make some profits. We'll show them what that looks like. These are the actions we need to do. We don't need to be quiet. We don't need to ask our senators to please stop allowing these insurance companies killing our children. We need to say this ain't right. Governor Cuomo actually rescinded that $20 premium this year, saying that during COVID, it was inhumane. I can't believe Governor Cuomo sat down with the health committee, with Senator Gustavo, with Dick Gottfried, with Phil Steck, who all sat with me and heard Danny's story, all on the health committee. And they mentioned the $20 premium without mentioning Danny's story. I highly doubt that. The reason Governor Cuomo didn't say he was moving that $20 premium because of Danny's story is because he wasn't trying to save Danny's. He was trying to save the insurance companies. He wanted to make sure that they stayed in play. I would have said, thank you, Governor, for saying you can't kill Danny's for $20. But to hell with you for saying they can kill somebody else's child for a different dollar amount. I'm not fighting to save Danny. We've missed that chance. We're fighting to save other Dannys, other Danielles. And saying, please don't let them do this anymore ain't gonna work. We stand up and we show them what they're doing. When I confronted Senator Carl Heastie, he couldn't look me in the eye. I don't think this next session, he's gonna call the New York Health Act because it's the right thing it's to do. I think he might call the New York Health Act because he knows if he doesn't, I'm going to be standing there and showing what he did. That's why he'll call the New York Health Act. And we need everybody else to do the same sort of thing because healthcare is a human right, not contracts that deny healthcare. So that's why I got involved. I won't quit. We won't quit. So I guess I could pass it on to the next one. That's what I have.
Scott, thank you so much. You have such a powerful voice. And thank you for sharing this pain, this motivation with us.
And I say this over and over again. It's not my voice. When I started this, I had 35 followers, 35 Twitter followers. And I tweeted out in rage what happened to my son. And it went viral. It wasn't my voice. It was everybody lifting my voice. I've adopted the suicide prevention hashtag, no one fights alone. When I adopted that, I knew it wasn't about, I needed to fight with them. I needed them to fight with me. I can't do this alone. I needed everybody else's help, you know? And I continue to use this solidarity approach. I mean, I will fight with anybody. I will go to any event, speak at any event, as long as I can get there and I have a place to sleep for the night. But I've been to San Francisco protesting at Nancy Pelosi's last month. I'll be in New York City next week, then back out to Vancouver, Washington, because even though Representative Jay Powell is a representative in Washington, she has not supported the whole Washington bill. They have not had a hearing for the whole Washington bill yet. So we're going out to demand that they have a hearing for the whole Washington bill, just like we had here in New York.
You said you can't do. You said you can't do this alone, Scott. You are not alone.
I know that. I know that. I need everybody else. I thank everybody every single day. And Ursula, I will continue to thank her for giving me that opportunity to look Carl Heastie in the eye and fulfill my promise to Danny. She did such amazing work putting that together and getting us all there. So every day she works so hard for millions of people that she will never even know. Thank you, everybody.
Scott, thank you so much. You really inspired us. And please visit the chat box, everyone. There are some things you can do to sign up to join in this activism. Remember, Ady asked us, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to lend your voice to passing the New York Health Act? Those numbers, I got them wrong, as Ursula pointed out, but still 61%. How can 81% of people believe that healthcare is a human right, and yet we can't operationalize it, right? You know, only 61% believe in the bill. It's money, you know, it's these insurance companies. Anyway, I'm editorializing. Let me introduce our next speaker, because this is another super, super, super important issue. Julia Solow is the lead leads the New York Caring Majority. She's an organizer with Hand in Hand, the network of domestic employers. I totally botched that, Julia, but she'll tell you what she does. Julia's passion for organizing comes from a long legacy of organizing in her family, personal experiences of struggle, and amazing mentors along her journey. She first got involved in movement work when social work professors in college introduced her to immigrant rights leaders fighting for the DREAM Act in 2010. Since then, Julia has been organizing in solidarity with working class people of color-led movements and power organizations on efforts to address gentrification, living wages for farm workers, and driver's license for undocumented immigrants in New York State, among others. Prior to her work at Hand in Hand, she has had the privilege of working at the AFL-CIO national headquarters in DC, Community Voices Heard in New York, and as an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer in Cleveland, Ohio. Julia has a master's degree in social work from CUNY Hunter College, and she is bilingual in English and Spanish, and she's going to talk to us about the work that she's doing now here in New York. Julia?
Thank you so much. What an amazing panel. I'm so humbled to be included in this. So yeah, I am working with a movement called the New York Caring Majority that is really pushing for investment in home care, home and community-based care. And, you know, I often say, and like many leaders in our movement often say, like that, you know, well, I'll just ask, has anybody here ever needed care themselves, been a caregiver, or hired a caregiver? You know, most people are, you know, if we've grown up, you know, with care, being cared for by somebody, we've experienced care. And it unfortunately is labor that is not valued yet in our society. And, you know, we saw in the film Ady's caregivers, Nate and Ayanna and his wife, and just it's hard work to be a caregiver. It's physical, it's emotional, and yet in New York, home care workers make just $12.50 an hour in most parts of the state. They are, you know, they make less than fast food workers. Not to say fast food workers deserve less, but just to like put into context, right? Like, it's really something that has big ramifications because there's now a shortage of home care workers. And, you know, while we don't like to admit it, like most of us, if we're not born with a disability, will eventually become disabled in our lives. 70% of us are going to need some kind of long-term care at some point in our lives. And we want that care to be in our home. You know, we want it to be, you know, in our safe place, right? Supported by caregivers who we trust. And we don't want to end up in nursing homes. And there's major challenges in making that a reality. And I really loved Tracy's exercise in visualizing the perfect day. Because for me, you know, the perfect day is not, you know, being stuck in a nursing home, right? It's being in my happy place, in my home, right? With people I love and trust. And so, so yeah, we face real challenges in ensuring, you know, home care for anybody who wants it. Our population's getting older, right? The baby boomers are becoming elders, and there's a shortage of home care workers because of the low wages. Home care agencies in New York are unable to cover nearly 30% of new cases. And this is going to become a greater and greater problem as the population gets older. And this is really the fact that home care workers are making $12.50 an hour in most parts of the state and are making like minimum wage in most parts of the country. It's really a gender and racial justice issue. This is a 90% women workforce, 80% people of color, 80% immigrant workforce. And it is investment in this workforce is long overdue. So there's a movement building in New York State to pass what we're calling fair pay for home care. It would be a transformational increase in wages for home care workers from $12.50 an hour in most parts to $22.50 an hour, or 150% of the regional minimum wage. And there is like phenomenal momentum building. It feels like we're in this historic moment where real gigantic change feels more possible than ever for home care. For the first time in history, like our president is talking about home care as infrastructure. And we have built a lot of momentum in New York. We have over 100 legislators are signed on to the bill. The majority leader of the Senate, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, just this last month came out publicly in support of fair pay for home care. It feels like we're in a real moment right now to win this historic investment and make this change that's so needed. And so I'll provide some calls to action here. You know, if you even have just 1 second of your time, you can sign our petition to the governor pressing for fair pay for home care. That will get you on a list where you're going to learn about other actions that you can take. We have an initiative right now to write letters to the editor. It's really can be really impactful to, you know, get our narrative and our stories in the headlines. Local legislators read the paper and they will see that. And then last but not least, building off of all the bird dogging talk going on, we are really flexing our bird dogging muscles. And I was very inspired by this film and the work of Bird Dog Nation and the work of, the Sunrise Movement is also doing really amazing work, bird dogging. So we're bird dogging for fair pay for home care. And we've already had 2 really good interactions with the governor. We're still working to get the firm commitment, but you can sign up to be part of a direct action team. And I just put the link in the chat because we need to just be everywhere. I think the whole be a hero message is really strong, right? It's like, all of us can be heroes, right? We can all step up to the plate. We all need to step up to the plate in the ways that are possible for us. Or maybe we can like stretch ourselves a little bit too. So I'm gonna just put my contact information in the chat as well. And thank you again for including me on this panel.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, so watch the film and you heard Ady, our hero. He asked in the film and he said, I'm willing to give my life. What are you willing to do? And I'm gonna show you something because I really enjoy that part of the film. I noticed that he did something. So, don't look at the mess. So this is my teacher that says something. Every time, a cause that is dear to me, I stand with immigrants. Every time Ady went into a building, he changed. So I'm pulling an Ady for all of you, because I'm sure that all of you do this. So this is something that we did at the sanctuary that shows that we need resilience. Scott, this one is very dear for us.
This is great.
I hope I fit on this because, you know, after the COVID wave, things are not as good as they used to. So.
Oh, yes.
So this is another one. And I have a full-time job, okay? I just fit in these things like Ady. And Sina said something about me and Ady. We tend to find the time and work for the causes that we care. And this is the best. I hope he's here. And if he see it, Ady, you are an inspiration. You are my hero. You are the hero for all of us. Your health act is gonna pass. This is a small teacher because I have hopes that I'm going to, to be able to fit. Oh, wow, okay. Jesus, and I'm gonna have to live with this. So this is what I'm wanting you to do today for the film that Nicholas was able to give us today. He touched in the humanity of Ady. He showed his family all the deepest, you know, thoughts of a man that is dying from ALS, all the sacrifices he made for the cause of having good health care, and that we have a more just system. And I didn't want to say it, but I'm going to have to. It's very important for me, Ady Barkan, because my uncle died of ALS. And to see Ady was very touching for me because the progression of ALS is the same for all the people that have it. Ady was very special because he showed that sense of humor that my uncle had. At the last moments, he never lost it. He used to say in Spanish, ahora yo mando a todo el mundo, porque he was paralyzed. Basically, he was bossing around everybody. So Nicholas, if we could have been best friends, you wouldn't have done this film so good. It's kind of, you basically, this is what was so important for me. Because when I saw the film, like, it's like, wow, people don't know that they're gonna hit with an illness and what will be the consequences of their life when this illness hits you. And it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, it doesn't matter if you're a CEO of a company. At the end, we all need healthcare. So thank you for this film. Thank you for all the activists that are here and the people that we haven't mentioned. You can do it. The teachers were just representing that if we believe in something, put the work, make that phone call, write that email, make that short video, do the Tracy, don't bury sections. Those are the best. I mean, I love you, Tracy. Walk into the people, even if you get arrested, be proud like he did and say, you know what? Yeah. I don't say bad words, but hell yeah. I got arrested, and be proud because you did it for a good cause. Thank you for coming to the Sanctuary for Independent Media. We're hoping to bring more events like this. Please, you know, we're a nonprofit. If you can donate with anything, we will be grateful. Donate to be a hero. Help Nicholas win this award so he can make more films, because this is not over. This is just the beginning. And remember, Ady knocked on those doors, regardless of being paralyzed, even in a wheelchair. He did not give up. So what are you willing to do?
Wow, Aileen, thank you so much. What a great way to end this. Listen, I have lost the ability to paste anything in the chat. It's been the most frustrating couple of hours ever. Not really.
Can I help you with something?
Yes, somebody from the sanctuary needs to help put in the join our mailing list so that you all know about the fantastic programs that we have coming up. We've got a lot of things cooking. I think we only have one upcoming event. It's an MLK community celebration on January 17th, 2022. But I know that we've got a lot of things in the hopper that everybody's going to be really excited about. So please, join our mailing list so that you know about upcoming virtual and in-person events. Jump onto that link for Not Going Quietly and drum up support for that film. Wouldn't it be awesome to sit at an Oscars party, right? And say, hey, I helped do that, So let's all do that. And Branda, we're going to send the chat box out to people who registered for this event, right? So that they have all the links if they had the problems that I did, clicking links and pasting stuff. So great. I just want to thank everybody. Nicholas, thank you for making the film. Thank you for spending so much time with us today. It really means so much to all of our community.
I'm so grateful to be here. It was amazing to hear everything Aileen just said. And I also want to say to Scott that I think what's so powerful about your story is really the same as what's Ady's, which is that you've managed to turn something so painful and so senseless in so many ways into a source of hope for other people. And that's what Ady's story is about. And that's what this movement is all about. And I was just very moved to hear you share that. And I think there's so many parallels to what we all can do in our lives when we're faced with the most kind of unimaginable circumstances, whether it's ALS or suicide or something else. There's something in every tragedy to learn from and to empower others with. That's what they build religions around, people like that who turn suffering into healing for others. So that's what you and Ady are doing.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, and thank you, Aileen. You actually made it easier for me on this call, being that I didn't have to tell my healthcare story myself. So it's difficult to do on a day-to-day basis. Actually, I just got off a call with Fred Hampton leftist, right? And every time I have to tell a story, I have to revisit his death. And it's not what I want to do. I mean, God, I don't want to do this on any given day. But I said, I made a promise to my son and I've got to keep that. And we're going to win this fight, because this whole strategy of the state by state isn't really state by state. We're looking for a national level. And we're thinking if we can get New York, Washington, California, just these 3 states to get theirs bills passed, we're going to have the momentum we need to put the pressure on a national level, and we'll get this done. I mean, it is only here in America that we use the privatized corporate insurance industry as the main support for our healthcare system. For that, we pay twice as much and we die 10 years sooner. This ain't right. If I'm paying more for something, I should get better results, not die 10 years sooner. Danny is a direct response of that 10 years sooner death sentence. So thank you, everybody, for being here. It means so much to me.
Wow. Thanks, Nicholas, for posting that. Thank you, Scott, for those words. Ursula, for your work. Best wishes for the day of action next Thursday. Tracy, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us tonight. We're so honored to have you here. And Julia, what an important fight you've got. So thanks for sharing those action links and for being mindful that some of us have a minute, some of us have more, and some of us have yet even more time to lend to this campaign. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to do that. And Aileen, my co-host, I just love you. Thank you so much for the way that you approach these issues. Branda, Steve, Sina, everyone behind the scenes at the sanctuary, thank you so much for what you did to make tonight possible. And I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend.